What if the next major war doesn't begin in Europe or the Middle East, but in a narrow stretch of water just 130 kilometers wide? A place where fighter jets scramble almost daily, warships shadow each other through contested seas, and millions of civilians quietly prepare for a conflict they hope never arrives. For years, analysts have warned that China and Taiwan are moving toward a collision course. American military officials have spoken about invasion timelines. Chinese leaders have repeated promises of reunification. Taiwan has expanded military drills, strengthened civil defense, and increased defense spending to levels not seen in decades. Yet despite all the warnings, many Taiwanese still believe war is unlikely. So is this truly the conflict everyone thinks is coming? Or is it another geopolitical crisis that may never explode? Today, we're examining the growing tension between China and Taiwan, the military preparations on both sides, the possible invasion scenarios, and why the world is watching this island more closely than ever before. The island at the center of a global dispute, Taiwan is a self-governing island of more than 23 million people. It operates its own government, military, currency, elections, and legal system. China, however, considers Taiwan part of its territory and insists that reunification must eventually happen. For decades, this disagreement remained largely political. Today, it has become one of the world's most dangerous flashpoints. Every diplomatic statement, military exercise, or political election is now viewed through the lens of a potential future conflict. Why China sees Taiwan as non-negotiable. For Chinese leader Xi Jinping, Taiwan is not merely a foreign policy issue. Beijing describes reunification as a historic mission tied to national identity and the country's rise as a global power. Chinese officials repeatedly state they prefer peaceful reunification, but they have never ruled out military force. From Beijing's perspective, allowing permanent separation would undermine one of the central goals of modern Chinese nationalism. That is why Taiwan remains what Chinese leaders often call a core national interest. Taiwan's position has changed. Taiwan's leadership takes a very different view. President William Lai argues that Taiwan already functions as a sovereign political entity and that its future should be decided by its people. While Taipei avoids declaring formal independence, it increasingly emphasizes a separate Taiwanese identity. This growing gap between Beijing's vision and Taiwan's self-perception has made compromise more difficult than ever. Both sides now speak about peace, but neither appears willing to surrender its fundamental position. Military drills are becoming normal. One of the clearest signs of rising tension is the frequency of military exercises. China regularly sends warships and military aircraft near Taiwan. Some drills simulate blockades, missiles, strikes, or encirclement operations. Taiwan responds with its own large-scale exercises. The annual Han Kuang military drills have expanded dramatically, involving tens of thousands of reservists and increasingly realistic combat scenarios. What once looked symbolic now resembles preparation for an actual emergency. Civilians are preparing too. Military planning is only part of Taiwan's strategy. Across the island, civil defense exercises have become more visible. Air raid drills temporarily stop transportation and business activity. Emergency teams rehearse evacuations, rescue operations, and mass casualty responses. In some exercises, buildings are treated as missile strike locations while volunteers play injured civilians. The message is simple. If war comes, the entire society must be prepared, not just the armed forces. Many Taiwanese still don't expect war. Despite growing military activity, public opinion remains surprisingly calm. Surveys show that many Taiwanese believe a Chinese attack is unlikely in the near future. Some argue that Beijing has threatened action for decades without launching an invasion. Others believe economic ties, international pressure, and the enormous costs of war act as powerful deterrents. This attitude creates a challenge for Taiwan's government, which must convince citizens to prepare for danger without creating widespread panic. The 2027 timeline. Perhaps the most discussed date in recent years is 2027. American officials have repeatedly suggested that China wants its military to possess the capability to seize Taiwan by that year. This idea became known as the Davidson window. Importantly, capability does not necessarily mean intention. China may seek military readiness without actually planning an invasion. However, the possibility has encouraged Taiwan, the United States, and regional allies to accelerate military preparations. As a result, the years leading up to 2027 are viewed as particularly sensitive. A full-scale invasion would be extremely difficult. Many people imagine thousands of Chinese troops storming Taiwan's beaches. While possible in theory, military experts consider such an operation extraordinarily complex. Taiwan is separated from mainland China by the Taiwan Strait, a body of water known for difficult weather conditions and strong defenses. An invasion would require transporting enormous numbers of troops, vehicles, supplies, and equipment while under constant attack. History shows that amphibious invasions are among the most challenging military operations ever attempted. Even for a powerful military, success would be far from guaranteed. A blockade may be more likely. Some analysts believe China could choose a different strategy. Instead of immediately landing troops, Beijing might attempt a blockade. Warships and aircraft could restrict shipping routes, disrupt trade, and pressure Taiwan economically. Such an approach could isolate the island while avoiding some of the risks associated with a direct assault. Because Taiwan depends heavily on maritime trade, even a limited blockade could have significant consequences for both the economy and civilian life. The gray zone battlefield. Conflict does not always begin with missiles. China and Taiwan already compete in what experts call gray zone warfare. This includes cyber attacks, disinformation campaigns, economic pressure, intelligence operations, and military intimidation below the threshold of open war. These tactics allow pressure to increase without triggering full-scale combat. Some analysts argue that this quieter contest is already underway and may continue for years regardless of whether conventional warfare ever occurs. The semiconductor factor. Taiwan's importance extends far beyond Asia. The island produces the vast majority of the world's most advanced semiconductor chips. These tiny components power smartphones, computers, vehicles, military equipment, and artificial intelligence systems. Any disruption to Taiwan's semiconductor industry would send shockwaves through the global economy. This is one reason governments around the world closely monitor developments in the Taiwan Strait. The consequences would extend far beyond the immediate battlefield. America's uncertain role. The United States remains Taiwan's most important security partner. Washington provides military assistance and maintains a policy known as strategic ambiguity regarding direct intervention. This means the United States deliberately avoids stating exactly how it would respond during a conflict. Supporters believe ambiguity deters both Chinese aggression and unilateral moves toward independence. Critics argue that uncertainty could encourage dangerous miscalculations during a crisis. Either way, American decisions would likely influence the outcome of any confrontation. The cost for China. Even if China achieved military success, victory could come at an enormous price. Economic sanctions, disrupted trade, international isolation, military casualties, and long-term instability would create significant challenges. A prolonged conflict could damage decades of economic development and reshape China's relationship with much of the world. For Beijing, the question is not simply whether reunification is desirable, but whether the costs would outweigh the benefits. The cost for Taiwan would face even greater immediate dangers. Cities, infrastructure, ports, communications networks, and civilian populations could all become targets. The economic impact would be devastating. Yet many Taiwanese argue that preparing for defense is necessary because surrendering political autonomy would carry its own costs. This debate continues to shape Taiwan's domestic politics and national identity. The war everyone thinks is coming. So is war inevitable? Not necessarily. History is filled with crises that appeared destined for conflict, but ultimately ended through deterrence, diplomacy, and strategic caution. China continues to increase military pressure. Taiwan continues strengthening defenses. The United States and regional allies remain deeply involved. At the same time, every major player understands that war would be extraordinarily costly. That is the paradox defining the Taiwan Strait today. The stronger military preparations become, the more each side hopes conflict can be avoided. Whether the coming years bring confrontation or continued deterrence remains uncertain. But one thing is clear: no potential conflict carries greater consequences for the global economy, international security, and the balance of power in the 21st century. And that is exactly why the world keeps watching Taiwan.